Hi there, and welcome to the iBAC Tech Trek Insurance Podcast. I'm your host, Tom Reid, the science officer on this journey, and the Tech Trek is where we explore the outer reaches of insurance technology. And I am super pleased to be joined today by two well-known industry colleagues, Graham Haigh. Graham is currently retired, although who knows for how long. He is the former chief operating officer of Wawanisa's Western region. And also keeping on with the former Wawanisa flavor, we have Cam Loeppky, formerly chief information officer at Wawanisa and currently exec VP at Narima Consulting. Gentlemen, thanks for joining.
Thanks, Tom.
I think we've got a few really interesting things. We're going to talk about innovation. We're going to talk about AI. We're going to talk about the battle for the broker's desktop. We're going to talk about broker future, new frontiers at risk. We're going to talk about all kinds of different things. But let's first start off with some table setting. So you guys have both been involved with CSIO. You've both been involved with the battle for connectivity with broker vendor systems. And I think, Graham, you wanted to give us a bit of
Yeah, a little bit of history here. And Cam would have been involved in this too. So you might be a little surprised by me bringing it up, but I think it'll come around on the conversation as well too. Is talking about you and iBAC, Tom. I remember getting a call, and was it 5 years ago now when you first came?
it's
into iBAC?
not quite 5, probably 4, 3.5, 4, something like that.
Yeah. Well, and I got a call at the time, and I had I can't remember if it was Cam or someone else from CSIO or iBAC or the IBAO, and I wish I could remember who it was. Anyways, I get this call and I go, okay, well, hey, we're considering Tom Reid for this role with iBAC. I see Cam smiling. Was it you? I can't remember. Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
And he goes, I don't know Tom all that well. Like, what do you think? And I said, Tom is exactly what we in the industry need to move forward digital connectivity and everything else. We need a bull in a china shop. We don't need a different. we need somebody who can get crap done and, blow out some walls on this. And Tom's the guy. So I really, really do support Tom coming into this role. And at the time, I was gaining from it as well, too, because you were coming in and helping me with the connectivity side, but also bringing the broker associations into the fold a little bit more forcefully as well in being direct with. There's too much diplomacy going on, not enough calling out of one another about where we're missing out on things. So I just love that you're in. Cam, I don't know if you have any.
I remember that. I remember they were looking for a candidate, and your name, because I had met you during True Flood days, I think, was probably when I first met you. And I remember that exact story Graham just told. And there was other candidates that were being vetted too. And it was like, yeah, Tom would be perfect for this. And you have, over the last 5+ years, pushed the right push. And you said it very well, Graham. The diplomacy. This industry was like, oh, let's not piss off anybody. Let's just we'll move at this pace of an elephant sometimes. And you're pushing the right buttons, and it's been good. I watched what's been going on now. And you said you got everything that you maybe asked for at CSIO, or at least a commitment to work on it. I'd love to know what those are, because I'm a few years removed from that now too. So.
Yeah, unfortunately, we can't yet talk about it, but I could say, because it hasn't fully been ratified, and simply
Right.
for an administrative reason, because Michael Lynn was at Travelers. He was the board chair. He's since moved over to Wawanisa, in fact.
Yep.
And so he was sort of out of the chair at that point. And Catherine Sinclair, was the interim CEO. So there's nobody firmly in the CEO chair, nobody firmly in the board chair. So, but the board has agreed to all the stuff. They just haven't communicated yet because, like I said, there's essentially a few sort of administrative T's to cross and I's to dot. But yeah, it's from an iBAC perspective, from a personal perspective, we're really, really pleased and really optimistic about where this is going.
Let's tell one more tale out of school, just because it's fun and it involves Cam as well too. Because Cam, Tom and I were really talking behind the scenes about, you know what, we need a data cop on CSIO standards. And it doesn't really look like anybody's stepping up to this. So Tom and I were trying to maneuver behind the scenes to really push the CSIO when you were involved with it to take on responsibility to be the data police. And I know that there was some pushback on that, not necessarily from you, but there was because it's not there, the consensus I don't think is fully there. Both the CSIO should be doing it, but I think there were also some players, and I'll actually say some carriers and vendors that weren't excited about this moving ahead fast either. Like, because some of their differentiated advantage might have been impacted because they looked at their technology stack as being a part of what set them apart from the rest. Whereas this was really, the rising tide floats all boats type discussion that was said, look, this has to get better. And the only way to do it is at an industry level. So I don't know, if you knew that Tom and I were really pushing on that behind the scenes, but it was kind of fun to do.
Well, definitely in some of the sessions, it would come up about policing, and that there was never the resources at the time at CSIO to do that. So that was the pushback that we'd always say, we don't have the resources to do it. But clearly, there needed to be some of that. And there is, I think, in the strategic plan when I was involved in it, we did a grading system. Like, if we can say, like, almost like that was the analogy AM Best does. You rate a carrier. If someone's an A rated, means they're following the standards to the letter. And guess what? Brokers do business with them because they're the ones who are making the investments to stay on the standard. Those that are C rated aren't doing the investments they need to do, and you can make a business choice and not do business with them. So that was the discussion we got into significantly. I'm not speaking out of school here. This became public information. So we did talk that way about a rating system. And I think that's what's in, I don't know if they got there yet, but
that's there. So
yeah,
on the CSIO website is the rating of, every carrier that's out there. And you can sort by, who's got an A, who's got a D, whatever. And it lists, I don't know how many carriers, but a lot of them. In fact, all of them, as far as I know. So yeah, so that's sure. There. I mean, that the governance council is there. Yeah. The grading system is there. People are paying attention to it. So that's a significant improvement over, a few years ago, because
absolutely.
You look at some of the bigger players in the industry, and they've adapted to the Z codes and, weird ways of doing this, that, and the other thing. And it is a barrier to entry of other companies. So innovation gets stifled, and it adds cost to the system, which means that it's worse from a customer perspective. So, when standards are well written and well used, it, like I said, floats all boats. And at the end of the day, the customer benefits, as does everybody in the value chain.
And we should actually give kudos to CAM, the CSIO, and the industry players for advancing this against some pushback at a variety of different levels. So, and again, for the audience here listening, there was a group of individuals, and you could go through a lot of the folks that Tom deals with on a pretty regular basis. They were leaders in pushing this voice, and it's gotten us to where we are today. Which is in a much better place. The other part that, Tom and I were briefly chatting about was it's no longer a skill issue about how to move forward with data integration, broker management system integration, the technology that you're talking about on AI and everything else. It is actually a will issue now. And that's actually freeing, because now we get to decide as an industry and players within it about the investments that we're prepared to make to move things forward. It's not about, oh man, we got to replace our legacy system to be able to even contemplate delivering on this. Most of that core foundational work has now been done. Now it's about, okay, well, when does it get to the top of the priority list, and when do we put the money into it to move it along? Yeah,
I completely agree. And it's, when I look back 3-4 years ago, where we started from to where we are now, and there's still work to do. It feels like we've made a ton of progress. It never feels in the day like you're making progress, but when you look back, you go, "Wow, we've made a ton of progress." And I am someone who's actually now, very optimistic about the future of how all this will come to play.
Well, and CAM was a particular leader in this industry-wide in Canada, moving Wawanesa forward with their technology transformation project, and really going Guidewire top to bottom so that it enabled this, and then pushing the integration side. So I think, kudos and thanks to Cam as well too for his work.
Totally. And I mean, Wawanesa and Cam specifically set the standard, so to speak, for a lot of this stuff by getting out there, implementing a new, piece of new technology called Guidewire, doing it in the right way, doing it with the right business outcomes, trying to get connectivity and, so the whole broker value chain significantly improved for both the broker and the customer and the carrier. And I think that's, that set the stage. If that doesn't happen, that's, in my opinion, pretty much a linchpin of all the other things that happen afterwards. So if Wawanesa and Cam hadn't shown that leadership, I don't think a lot of stuff happens. I'll tell you a quick story. So think you talk about like the multiverse and how previous decisions could have changed things. So probably a couple of years before Cam joined Wawanesa, I was working at Aviva, heading up Western Canada, with a tech background and now with business development and underwriting and so on as well. And I got a phone call from a headhunter, and she said, "Oh, there's a large insurance company in Canada looking for a new CIO." And I was like, "Oh, that seems kind of interesting. Tell me more." And so she talked about the job, and I said, "Oh, they're going to do a big transformation. Oh, that sounds really exciting." And I said, "Who is it?" She says, "Well, I can't tell you. It's confidential until you get into the process." I said, "Okay, well, can you at least tell me, if I would have to move?" I was living in Calgary and had, teenage kids, let's say. She said, "Yeah, you'd have to move." I said, "To where?" She said, "Winnipeg." And I said, "Oh, clearly you're talking about Wawanesa. Why don't you fuck off?" And I hung up. And the reason I said that, because at the time, Wawanesa's technology was terrible. It was awful. And I had zero interest in, getting involved in that. And clearly Cam didn't know what I knew.
Yeah, clearly. That's a funny story. I've never heard that.
That's a really good story.
Oh,
Well,
it is.
and when you talk about Cam's history, Cam had to make some really difficult decisions when he first got to Wawanesa too, that are kind of part of Wawanesa's culture and history as well too. So
yeah, it was. It's funny that's the timing that you said, because I walked in what I thought was, I would say today, was my dream job. I walked in to be CIO of a major insurance company, and oh my God, it was like a throwback. It was a throwback, culturally, technology-wise, all of it. So we had a lot of work to do, absolutely. And as I say, we had to put a good team together, and we got there. And I'm pretty proud of what that team was able to accomplish. And then we gave it back to the industry. You talk about integration. We gave what we did, our API strategy and following CSIO standards, and kind of helped drive all that. Because I was on the board of CSIO, I didn't want to be the one going a different direction. Obviously, we're going to follow what we tried to do. And even if you look forward to today now, maybe that's not the way Guidewire has evolved, and the integration that Guidewire now offers is going to have to, Wawanesa is going to have to retrofit a little bit to stay current, because I think there's other carriers now, and there's new ways of doing a way more efficient way of integrating that I know I've presented it personally to the CSIO, and I think Aviva has, and others have, a different way of doing this. And I think we got to continue to evolve. The technology is going to always evolve. We have to evolve. We got to set the bar somewhere. We set the standard that let's get to this, and then we can evolve it over time. And I think that's what's now happened in the last number of years. And the future is really bright for that. And I hope we can move that forward. So
I can say I'm glad it worked out that way, and I'm glad that you didn't know what I knew, so you took on that role and did a great job. Because as soon as they said that, I knew the mountain that had to be climbed. And I thought to myself, man, I don't know if I can climb that mountain. Like, just not ready for that. And luckily you were, and things have worked out. So that's fantastic.
Well, now the leadership at Wawanesa is strong, and Michael Lynn will do a great job. And he can take that ball forward. And obviously he cares about the broker industry and the broker community, and the CSIO being the former chair as well, or current chair. And we'll see where he goes with it too. So that'll be great.
So I know we're going to get into kind of discussions around AI tools and all that kind of stuff. One of the bridges that I wanted to make is actually talking about Guidewire. First off, love Guidewire. I think it's been an incredible addition to the toolkit across North America and beyond. Where I get a little bit concerned is as you get a client base that's as big as it is, all of a sudden you become a bit of a legacy provider, and your revenue base is built off of existing clients and maintaining the current status quo, which I think is where we ran into issues on the broker management system side of things too. So, I'd like to kind of a little caution for our Guidewire friends out there is maintain that dynamism, that progression, and adopt new technologies and tools. Don't wait on this or want to, really focus on your margins and revenue side versus maintaining that forward thinking and forward progression, because that's cost other parts of our business and really held us back for a period of time too.
So that is a great call out. And actually in keeping with that, so I'm going to take a question out of the order that I had set up, which was somewhat random in the first place anyway, so I don't feel bad about doing that. So one of the topics I want to talk to you guys about is sort of well, I've labeled it the battle for the broker's desktop, and I'm looking at some of the key differences and potentially similarities between the core systems, as we call them, the broker management systems that look after the key insurance stuff from a broker's perspective, of which there's 4 or 5 depending on how you count them, and most of whom have been around for a long time. Acturus is a new-ish player, and TrueFlood recently announced their foray into the BMS world, but we've had the same players for some time. Rival is getting has been getting a significant refresh in the last couple of years with Greg Purdy and his team out there. But when you look at where the change is happening, in my opinion, and I'm love to get your guys' opinion, a lot of the innovation, most of the innovation in the insurance sector is coming out of what we loosely call Insurtechs, who are these small vendors. TrueFlow was one of the OGs, and you got Pro Navigator. And
Navigator as well too, who I'm doing some advisory work.
Yep. Yeah. So, Pro Navigator's been around for a while, but then you've got, relatively recent ones like Coyos Intelligence, which I consult with, and Quandary and QuickFacts and Semiar out of Montreal. Montreal's got this amazing little insurtech community going on. Blew me away when I was out there. And there's a whole bunch of other ones I just can't remember off the top of my head. But they're if you go back 15 years, none of these guys existed. And now I could probably name, with a little bit of help, probably 20 in the Canadian space alone. So, basically, my question to you guys is, why do you think that's happening? Like, why, if we've had the same tech for the last 20, 25 years that, has worked for brokers in the past, why all of a sudden are we seeing this little explosion of new organizations? Cam, do you want to take a crack at that first?
Sure. I think it's what you kind of opened with. There's been these same players since I've got into the insurance industry. They've been the Applieds and the Acturus of the world that have a huge market share, and they haven't moved their products forward as in terms of improving the technology base and the functionality and those things. So guess what? The startups or the Insurtechs come around to solve other problems that the other ones aren't dealing with, and I think that's why they've jumped in. It's about solving problem in between the broker and the carrier and the consumer. So I think that's where they're helping the industry. I think we should embrace it, not shut it down by any means. So,
well, and partners, I think, are huge. So I would, just playing off the Cam's comments there, I would say legacy vendors have been focused on building a better horse and buggy as opposed to really trying to renew the industry and improve productivity and cost. We shouldn't be taking much money out of the premium value chain as we do to deliver our products and services. And, we've got to really focus on those types of things versus making a better horse and buggy, which I actually will push brokers on that comment as well too, because that's where a lot of their focus has been. Hey, Applied, or hey, other BMS vendor, improve this portion of what you're doing versus let's re-engineer this. And either you're going to do it for me, or I'm going to go to an Insurtech and find that and build my my technology stack out with other entrants and that type of thing.
It is interesting because what I see with a lot of the Insurtechs is that they're going after individual pain points, right? Like Quandary is going after very specific sort of RPA type of things for double entry and what have you. And, Koios is going after that large amount of time it takes for a customer to blurt out all of their information to get an auto policy written or what have you. And QuickFacts is going after this, the volume of information that carriers produce that brokers have to, somehow magically understand on a moment's notice, even when it's changed, that morning. And I could go on, but they're all going after these individual pain points. And do you think it makes sense that, I mean, from a broker's perspective, should they be asking for everything into one system, or is it okay to say I've got my core BMS, whether it's iBAC or Rival or whatever, and I supplement it with all these other tools that kind of pick away at some of the bigger pain points?
I think we take that. I think having a bit of an ecosystem is a good thing. I think trying to put into one big behemoth, you're not going to move it move things along faster. I think you need different tools for the job. But what's key to this is the integration. Can they be integrated together? So you're not double entry, that you can bolt these systems together through APIs, through however we can do that. But I think it's through APIs and be open. The systems have to be open and you can share data, and it's workflow based to solve those problems. I don't think an Applied or an Acturis can build it all. They can't. A Guidewire can't build it all on the carrier side. I'm heading to Guidewire Connections in 24 hours. I'm going to be on the floor in the Vegas event, the biggest Guidewire event. There are hundreds of those bolt-on things for Guidewire as part of the ecosystem. The key thing, it's open, and there's an integration strategy, and there's a pattern that you use to integrate. And that's what's going to put it all together, I think. And I think it has happened on the broker management side too.
Partnerships are vital. So being a Guidewire partner is incredibly important if you want to serve the Canadian marketplace. So I really do think that focus. But the other part is, we've seen mergers and acquisitions on the insurance company side. We've seen it on the broker side for sure. We've seen it on the legacy vendor side. At some point, we will see some of that in the Insurtech side as well, too. I think complementary businesses can probably deliver greater value, partnering or in other ways investing in one another to deliver their services. So what I think you're seeing is, because it's in the founding stage, you're seeing them all focus on different tactical components versus having a strategy. And I think now you're going to see over the coming years a little bit of that merging going on. What I would really hope, though, is that the Insurtechs don't necessarily look at their exit strategy strictly to be with the legacy vendors. I'd like them to see other Insurtechs as where they need to partner, because I would suggest if it goes to a legacy vendor, it could get squashed pretty quickly. So I really like to see the Insurtechs look for partnerships amongst themselves and build that toolkit out.
Why would you say that, Graham? That's never, ever happened in our industry ever before.
I can't imagine what we're laughing about right now, but yeah.
Well, I know, and it's unfortunate when it does. You get all excited about a new entrant, and then all of a sudden it gets eaten up and spit to the side. But I think that, of course, any founder wants to kind of look at what their potential exit strategy is as well too. And just my encouragement would be for Insurtechs to look amongst themselves for partnerships and build their own ecosystem out. And they're the ones that are driving this forward, and they're actually going to push the legacy vendors to get more progressive too.
No question in my mind. That's where the innovation happens, and that's where you always need those folks who are out front whether that's Wellmanisa from a Guidewire perspective or some of the Insurtechs. But then because it drives more people to the table and it drives more innovation after the fact. And the one issue that I potentially have is that brokers typically are very slow adopters. Right? There's always a few that are doing new things. I look at Adam Mitchell, who is doing some behind the scenes, some really cool stuff. And I've met a few brokers in Quebec that are just way out there. I mean, their marketplace is quite a bit different than everybody else's.
Tom, can we actually just mention that for a second? Because I actually would like to, positively call out the Quebec marketplace and Quebec brokers. What the rest of Canada generally doesn't see is how technology advanced the Quebec market and Quebec brokers are. Now, they've been driven in part because of the structure of the auto product there. So it's a stripped down product. It's just the optional components, the tin components, excess liability, but the rest sits within a government plan. So you don't have as much premium to play with in there. So you have to be efficient, and it's driven that market to a place that the rest of Canada should be a little bit envious of. And it's a very dynamic marketplace. So, kudos again to the Quebec marketplace for how far they've pushed the industry as well too. And we could learn a lot outside of Quebec.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, I mean, I grew up in Quebec, but I've been outside of Quebec for some time. And I guess it was about a year and change ago, I got a call from the RCCQ, and, they're doing their first Tech Summit Day. And would I come out and give a presentation there? And I said, sure, that'd be great. So I went out there and gave my little presentation, and then you hang around for the rest of the day. That one was at the Montreal Science Center, and they had 170 brokers out there, super buzz about the organization. And so that's where I met Koyos Intelligence. I met Jazz Communications. I met Semiar, a couple of the ones, can't remember off the top of my head. And I found out what the RCCQ was doing to support their brokers from a tech perspective. They have a whole little consulting team led by Yvonne Foster, who's fantastic. And I walked away and I went back to Peter and I said, we have to do our next in-person iBAC tech meeting in Montreal, because these guys are crushing it and nobody knows about it outside of Quebec. The innovativeness, if that's a word, of the brokers in Quebec. And you're right, it's been driven by the market. It's been driven by, competition from the direct writers and, the style of product and that kind of thing. But they responded to it, both by the brokers themselves, the Insurtech providers, and the association. It's like this really positive feedback loop of these organizations that, do a lot of work together. And it's like, I walked away from that day thinking, oh my God, these guys blow me away. We got to replicate this.
Adding another comment on there, again, for those that are listening in to the podcast, is support Canadian vendors. There are some really good Insurtechs in Canada. Tom, you and I are both doing a little bit of consulting and advising with those. Cam runs into them pretty regularly through his work, both now and previously. If you support the Canadian marketplace, does look different, in particularly to immediate south. We have a different setup, more geographically diverse, and variety of different things that make it more unique. Canadian vendors are worth supporting. So pick Canadian vendors wherever you can, particularly on the Insurtech side. They're driving the business here, and they do deserve support.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, if they don't see it here, they will go to the U.S. Right? I work with one like real little startup, like a literal startup, who's doing some kind of interesting things. And she's got a few intros into the U.S., partly because of Jeff Roy and partly because of her own sort of, auspices. But she's getting more traction in the U.S., where nobody knows who she is, than she is in Canada. Right? So, I mean, they're looking at the Americans are looking at it from the perspective of, does this help my business? Is this robust enough? Is this secure enough? Is it worth the money? They're looking at it from a business perspective. And sometimes I think brokers in Canada tend to sit back and wait for others to do something for them. Not everybody, but certainly as a group, I don't see the desire for enough. There's not enough from a demand perspective, in my opinion. There needs more demand.
It's not just brokers. It's
Yeah.
it's insurance companies as well too. And if you talk about, like, if you even go up, a little bit higher than that, you talk about Canadian economic productivity, we're not doing well. And we, whether you call it laziness or otherwise, we're not driving things far and fast enough and trying new things. There's a very small group, and the three of us could probably name that group in Canada that are really trying to move it. But where are the rest of the industry in making sure that we are driving efficiencies, productivity, customer value? We're very focused on our own individual businesses and returns, and that's an inward look versus an outward look. We need to be more outward looking and driving this business along instead of just looking at what our own personal returns are.
I would just echo what Graham just said and add into there that customer experience, because you said it about the Quebec market. The direct writers pushed the broker side, and I think in Canada and the rest of Canada, and my own personal experience dealing in the broker community, is I'm 100% on advice, advocacy, and choice. That's what brokers bring to a consumer walking in their office. Sometimes I don't see that when I walk in the office. Simple things. And we're going to get into AI around this, but square footage of your house. What's the, like, it goes through the questions and no, let's get that data. It's available. I can go on ChatGPT, type the address of my home, and it'll tell me all that stuff. Let's figure this out, because there is a way to really improve that customer experience versus going on TD.com and buying my insurance there, because that's pretty easy to do too. And they've got a bunch of that built. So how do we do that for the broker channel and that customer experience? Because I still want to talk to somebody who's an expert, right? That's what I want when I walk in, whether it's, don't tell me I need a 100 deductible or 200 deductible. I get that part. That's not so much advice, but my home or my business or what risk am I trying to insure? I want an expert to do that for me. And that's the value. That's what you'll pay for. But I want it to be easy. I want to have the different ways of doing it. So,
yeah, I just had a experience with the benefit of a broker recently. So I bought a new to me car. Right, so I deal with a mechanic up in Airdrie, just north of Calgary, who's looked after my cars now for a little while, and he occasionally will buy his customers' cars, fix them up, resell them, buy some from auction. In this case, I was chatting with him. I said, "Hey, do you have any sedans lying around? I need a new sedan." He said, "Well, I'm selling my car," and I said, "Great. What is your car?" He goes, "It's a manual transmission Audi S4." I went, "Cool. How old is it?" 2014. So it's 11 years old. I went, "But it's in mint condition. This has been owned by a mechanic, right? From day one." I'm like, "Okay, this car is cherry. I'm going to buy it." So I bought it, or I was about to buy it. And he said to me, "Oh, by the way, it's stage 3 tuned." And I'm like, "What does that mean?"
Yeah.
He goes, "Well, I've remapped the engine control unit. So it pulls 500 horsepower. It's got new belts and pulleys on it. It's got basically a diffuser on the back for airflow and an upgraded air intake for the supercharger." And I was like, "Oh my God, I gotta have this car." But then my insurance brain kicked in and I went, "Oh, these are all aftermarket modifications. I have to disclose this and I'm probably not going to get insured." So I called my broker and I said, "Here's the thing." And she goes, She goes, "I'm going to call the underwriter." And so she calls, the next day she calls back. She goes, "Okay, normally I don't do this, but I did trade my firstborn son, and I got you your coverage for this car." I'm like, "Sweet." No way I was going to get that through TD or anybody else, right? I wouldn't even talk to an underwriter. They'd go aftermarket modifications or a chatbot, anything.
Technology wasn't going to fix that for us. That is the beauty of still having the intervention, the human intervention into the exchange. So
for the exceptional cases, most of the time, right? I don't want to go there and talk about the square footage of my house. You've known the square footage of my house for 20 years. Cut through all that crap, do that with tech. But those times where it's out of the box, a little different, that's when I want the human expert who's got the relationship to step in and go, got your back.
Yeah, agreed.
So let's talk about AI, right? So because everybody's talking about AI, so what the fuck? Let's talk about AI. Now there is so much hype. Like I don't know about you guys, but I don't go on LinkedIn that much anymore. But when I do scroll on LinkedIn, usually I see everybody I see these days is an expert on AI. Everybody's consulting on AI. Everybody's talking about AI. Everybody can help you with your AI. And I'm like, most of you guys don't even know what you're talking about. And this didn't exist in the public consciousness before January of 2024. It's not even, for most people, it's not even 2 years old. But yet we have a million experts out there, tons of hype. So where is AI? Let's cut through the hype. Both of you guys are no bullshit guys. Let's cut through the hype and say, where is AI, from what you've seen, actually making a difference today? Right? Is it on the claim side, from an insurer's perspective, underwriting, distribution, sales, or service? Where is AI actually showing a benefit in the Canadian P&C sector today?
Cam, why don't you start, and then I'll jump in kind of from a COO perspective on it.
First of all, it's real. I think it's a incredible technology change as quick as this has happened in the last 2 years, like you said, Tom. And I'm seeing applicability in everyone's life. Everyone should be using AI for whatever it is. If you guys ask it a question, whatever, and I think about it, I want to deal with a lawyer that uses AI. I want to deal with a doctor that uses AI. I want to deal with a broker that uses AI. Not to do exclusively, but to use it as another reference point and offer me the advice I need. Whether I'm having a medical issue, what is the first thing you do when you get a medical issue? You go and you Google it, right? And see what, and what we used to do was, go read what John Hopkins says or what this medical WebMD or whatever it is. It's all there now. It's all there in many different tools of AI that is, and it may not be 100% either. So don't take it as gospel. However, I personally had to do that recently, and I went to my doctor with it, and guess what? He said all the same things. So it was like, okay, so his reference point is all the textbooks and everything he's studied over the years and his experience and the reports and the studies that come out. That's all now in one place, and it can churn that information out way faster than any human could do previously. Well, you can't tell me that doesn't apply in a broker world or a legal community, to those kind of things. And I think that's where we have to embrace it. And I think there are a lot of use cases that are out there. Now, when you ask what's going on in the industry, I'm going to see a ton of it next week, I'm sure, at the event I'm going to. There's all kinds of, every session is AI something, right? So there's all kinds of stuff going on. How much is actually embedded in every transaction today? It varies by carrier. I know the carriers that I work with today, there's many different in production use cases that are available. Chatbots are the obvious easy one, but I've seen it on the claims side, claims intake, just doing natural language. Hey, I got my car hit yesterday, and you just type it all in, and it builds the integrations right into Guidewire, and boom, your claim's open in FNOL. So there's a much of those kind of use cases that are out there. I know, well, you can speak to Wawanise's, Graham, because I know you're involved in them. I've heard about them after the fact, but they have a couple specific use cases that they're using AI for. It is not a fad. It's hype. Of course, it's very hyped, but it's real. And I think we need to embed it in everything that is going to be, not to displace a human, to make them better at what they do and get rid of the inertia. Like, yeah, we can use tech to do some of the other stuff, but make the human that's working be better at what they do, and that broker to be better, I think, can help.
Yeah. If I just jump in there, one of the very first times I used AI for something other than making stupid pictures of cats with machine guns and whatever was Peter Braid had asked me. He was briefing the board on some of the work we were doing on the iBAC data exchange project, and he asked me to write a little briefing document for him in advance. And I went, great. And so normally I'd sit down and I'd go through all my records, and I'd take a couple hours to sort of write out something legit and edit it a bit, and probably take me, let's say, 3 hours to sort of write up something specific, right? And I thought, what the heck? So I have a license with the Google dude, so I tend to use Gemini a lot. And I went to Gemini. I went, here's my prompt, blah, 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 blah. I want it written like this. Here's kind of the context. It's a briefing document. You would need to look for everything iBAC DX. And so it wrote something, and it actually remembered some things I completely forgotten about on work that I was doing. And so it wrote this nice document for me. I looked at it. I edited it a little bit, and I shipped it over to Peter, and he said, great. And this, great, thanks very much. And I said, oh, FYI, I used that writing, or I wrote that using Google Gemini. He looked at me and he said, I thought the grammar was better than usual.
Huh. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So my supporting both of your comments there, it is real, but I'm going to take a little bit of a different perspective on it in two different areas. So first off, it is the first kind of transformational technology that I would actually say that I'm not a skeptic on. So we're old enough. Remember when email came out and the internet came out? And if you go back and you look at different documents, where it's going to be the end of the 40-hour work week. Like, people are only going to have to work 20 hours a week at most and all that kind of stuff. There's not a person that I talk to in our industry that is working less hard than what they did 20 years ago when these tools started coming out. So what I wouldn't be overly concerned about is, look, are good people going to not have quality work to do? That's not the case. However, what I think we do need to, and it's going to go back to some of the points that I've been making earlier, we have to improve customer value. Cam mentioned, what is it? AI is a tactic. It's not a strategy. So what are the strategic items that we're trying to fix? And one of the things I do think that we're not spending enough time talking about, and I'm wagging my finger, is customer value. Like, costs of reconstruction, costs of dealing with weather events and repair costs on vehicles, like the inflationary increase is significant. We can't necessarily control too much about those input costs on it, and they get passed along to consumers. We can control the 30 odd points that we take out of the transaction to feed the engine. We have to be more efficient at the company side. We take 10 to 12 points generally out. Part of that includes tax, but we take money out. We need to drive that percentage down. Brokers need to do the same thing. Adopt AI, improve productivity within the group that you've got. It'll also help with the big HR crunch and crisis that whenever I've been out to brokers over the last 5+ years, what's their number one concern? It's finding talent to do the work. So let's focus on improving productivity. It helps that global component where Canada isn't productive enough compared to the other G7 members. Let's drive that, and let's focus on reducing the dollars that we're taking out of the insurance chain and provide greater value back to consumers. And I really do believe that's where we can get the benefit out of AI.
The world of insurance is changing because the world of tech is changing. Join us on the journey at ibactech.ca.